Man, let me tell you, this game felt like one of those nights where you sit down thinking you are about to watch your team coast, and instead you end up pacing around the living room wondering how everything slipped right through their hands. From the jump, it looked like the Eagles had control. The energy was there. The crowd felt into it. The first half felt like the kind of football this team is supposed to play. And then everything just unraveled, bit by bit, play by play, mistake after mistake. It was like watching a slow leak you cannot plug no matter how hard you try. The injuries started stacking up and you could tell guys were getting frustrated. The offense kept stumbling at the worst possible moments, missed chances everywhere. And before anybody even tries to pin every single thing on the coaching staff, there are certain mistakes that have nothing to do with a play sheet. That missed field goal, for example, man, that has to be made indoors, controlled environment, clean snap, clean hold. That has to go through. No wind to blame, no weather to blame, no excuses. You got to execute when the moment calls for it, and that one hurt because it should have been automatic. Then you get to that kickoff return situation. I do not know what the thought process was there. You have a ball clearly heading to the end zone, clearly going to give you the touchback, and instead you force something and hand the Cowboys free momentum they did not earn. They did not even cash in on it, but that is not the point. Plays like that shift vibes. They throw rhythm off. They give the opponent extra confidence even when they walk away with nothing on the scoreboard. Those are the kinds of little moments that pile up and come back to haunt you later, but nothing had me shaking my head like the moments with Saquon Barkley. And look, I get it. Nobody is denying the man's talent. You still see the burst. You still see the athleticism. But this year he keeps trying to hit home runs when all he needs is a simple single. That second and long dump off where all he had to do was square upfield and go. If he just gets vertical and hits the lane, he has the first down easily. Instead, he starts dancing, trying to make something highlight-worthy. Slips, falls short, and the entire drive falls apart right after that. That little moment snowballed. Third down comes, pressure hits, and suddenly the whole flow is cooked. That is the difference between staying in control and letting the opponent creep back into the game. And that fumble, man, that one cannot happen. Surrounded by defenders, nowhere to go. Hanging onto the ball is the only job in that moment. You could almost see the frustration on his face. Before the ball even popped out, you know when a player is pressing hard, trying to create something out of nothing. This offensive line has been messed up all year, so I get why he feels like he needs to force a spark, but not like that. Not when the situation calls for securing the ball and living for the next snap. Tank Bigsby came in for one carry earlier and hit the hole like a rocket, because he did not hesitate or overthink. Sometimes that is all you need. Just hit the lane and move. And speaking of the offensive line, man, it was rough, real rough. The interior completely collapsed too many times. Protection broke down at the worst possible moments. Jalen Hurts spent half the night trying to create something out of chaos, and honestly, statistically, he played a really solid game. No interceptions, made plays with his legs when the run game completely died. Stayed composed even when everything around him went sideways. That one ugly sack late in the game was brutal. But outside of that, it is hard to blame this loss on him when he kept them alive drive after drive. But you cannot ignore the penalties. 14 penalties. 14. You cannot win football games like that. That is not even about talent. That is just awareness and discipline. You wipe away the questionable ones, and the total is still outrageous. False starts, holds, mental lapses, alignment issues, all stacking up. And the defense even threw in a 12-man on the field penalty in a crucial moment. That just cannot happen in professional football. Those are free yards, free first downs, free momentum given away for no reason. What makes it more painful is how many chances this defense had to flip the momentum back. Zach Bond had an interception fall literally into his hands in the fourth quarter. If he secures that, the entire final stretch of the game looks completely different. Instead, the Cowboys stay alive, extend the drive, and punch in the touchdown. Plays like that define tight games, and the secondary, man, the injuries did not help at all. Once Reed went down and Sidney Brown stepped in, it was clear things were shaky. Then Andrew Makuba gets rolled up on, ends up in a boot. And suddenly the entire back end looks like patchwork, and Cooper DeJean outside. Yeah. That experiment ended real fast. George Pickens took that matchup personally and cooked repeatedly. The man is built for the slot. That is his game. That is where he shines. Throwing him on the outside against one of the most physically gifted receivers in the league was just asking for trouble, and that switch forced adjustments everywhere else, leaving guys like Adoree Jackson and Quinion Mitchell in less ideal matchups. The whole thing became a revolving door of mismatches. Then you factor in that the Bears are next, a team with real weapons and a head coach who can dial up routes from anywhere on the field. And you can see why people are nervous. This secondary needs to get healthy, fast, because another performance like this will not cut it. Mukuba probably will not be ready on a short week if he is already in a boot. So we might see Sidney Brown again, and hopefully, with more reps, he looks sharper. But right now it feels like everybody on that side of the ball is hanging on by a thread. Coaching. Man, I am trying to be fair. I really am. But when the offense becomes predictable, when the situational calls keep falling flat, it is hard not to look at the guys with the headsets. This play calling rotation just is not working. The rhythm is off. The sequencing feels strange. And the adjustments do not come fast enough. The players are frustrated. You can hear it in their interviews. You can see it in their body language when multiple veterans are openly hinting at confusion with the plan. Something is clearly wrong behind the scenes. And yet, even with all that chaos, the Eagles still sit at the top of the conference. That is what makes this so maddening. This team has the talent. This team has the roster. This team has shown it can dominate for entire halves at a time, but football is not played in halves. You need to finish. You need to execute. You need to close out games like this when you build a lead. Because you know what is coming now. Cowboys fans are going to talk. For years. For decades. They are going to bring up this collapse every chance they get. And honestly, they have every right to. The Eagles handed this game away piece by piece. Man, picking up from all that chaos. It really feels like this team is caught between who they know they can be and who they keep showing up as on these weird, sloppy Sundays, every time you think they have turned the corner and learned how to finish games. Something snaps in the second half and you get this completely different version of the Eagles. Like somebody flipped a switch and drained all the rhythm out of the building. And the wild part is the patterns are so clear. You watch the first half and everything flows. Motions look clean. Timing feels sharp. Protections hold up just enough. And the pass game looks alive. Then halftime hits and it is like the script turns stale. Everything slows down. The routes get predictable. The calls lose creativity. And all the mistakes that were hiding underneath the surface suddenly start bursting up through the floor. The lack of a run game is probably the biggest anchor dragging everything down. When you cannot run the ball in the second half, you cannot close out games. You cannot kill clock. You cannot control tempo. You cannot keep your defense off the field. And you definitely cannot protect a lead. Every winning team in this league knows you finish games on the ground. And right now the Eagles cannot even get 2 or 3 yards consistently. It is not just Saquon Barkley dancing too much. It is the whole rushing attack collapsing the moment the ball is snapped. The offensive line is beat up. Guys are playing hurt. Guys are getting pushed backwards. And instead of designing runs that adjust to that reality, the staff keeps forcing the same inside handoffs that get blown up instantly. You watch it and wonder how many times you need to see the same thing fail before somebody switches it up. That is where coaching steps in, because you can see the disconnect. Players are frustrated. You had linemen openly talking about the scheme not helping them. Wide receivers throwing glances on the sideline like they already know what is coming. And Jalen Hurts having to shoulder the whole rushing load again because the backs cannot find space. Every time Hurts takes off, you can tell he is doing it because nobody else is getting the job done, not because that was the design plan. And honestly, as tough as Hurts is, that is not sustainable. You cannot bank on your quarterback dragging broken plays out of the mud week after week. That is eventually going to wear him down. And the team with him, and the defense, man, the defense is in survival mode. They look tired at the end of games because the offense keeps sending them right back onto the field. They are missing tackles they normally make. They are miscommunicating on coverages they normally nail. They are playing slower because they keep getting stuck in long drives after being on the field forever. The potential is still there. You see it in flashes. You see the talent. You see how aggressive they can be early in games. But the cracks start showing when they have to defend to many plays, and once fatigue sets in, they lose that edge and teams start chipping away at them. The injuries make everything worse. Losing Reed Blankenship threw off the entire alignment in the secondary. And Drew Mukuba going down was a huge blow because he was finally finding his rhythm. Suddenly you have backups being thrown into roles they are not ready for, matchups they cannot win, and responsibilities they have barely practiced. And against a team with receivers who can separate or go up and win contested catches, that becomes a nightmare. It felt like every other play somebody was rotating in. Somebody was getting checked out. Somebody was playing through something. You cannot build chemistry that way. Especially on the back end of a defense, communication becomes a coin flip. One blown signal, one late rotation, one misread, and the whole coverage can get shredded. And speaking of getting shredded, that Cooper DeJean experiment on the outside exploded fast. He is a talented dude, but he is a slot defender all the way. When you put him outside against a physical receiver, he loses his advantage. Inside, he can mirror. He can jump routes. He can use his instincts. Outside, he has to win with size, strength, and long speed, and that is not his game. Watching him try to jam and then recover on those deep routes was like watching somebody run uphill in sand, and once the opponent realized he was uncomfortable, they kept going back at him until the staff had no choice but to move him again. That kind of constant shifting is exactly why the defense never settled in during the second half. The frustrating part is the Eagles actually started this season with one of the deepest secondaries in the league on paper. You had versatility. You had options. You had physical corners and ball-hawking safeties. But the injuries have been non-stop. Every time one guy returns, another goes down. Every time the lineup starts to look stable, something happens that forces another reshuffling. That instability is part of why this team keeps giving up huge plays in critical moments. You cannot build trust or rhythm when guys keep switching positions and roles every other week. Offensively, it is the same thing. The timing between Hurts and his receivers is still strong, but the protection is not giving those plays long enough to develop. You see A.J. Brown fighting through double coverage, Devonta Smith carving up defenders with his routes, even Dallas Goedert getting involved again. And yet the offense stalls because either the line collapses or the play calling becomes stale. Hurts can only do so much when he is running for his life or throwing under pressure snap after snap, and you see it in his expression sometimes. He is calm, yeah, but even he knows this offense is leaving points on the field. And special teams, man, this was the one unit that had actually been solid most of the season. But mistakes crept in here too. Missed kicks, poor decisions on returns, field position gifted to the opponent. When all three phases start leaking at the same time, you get collapses like this. It is never just one thing. It is a chain reaction. One mistake opens the door, another mistake pushes it wider, and by the time you realize it, the whole game has flipped upside down. FlyEaglesFly News family, smash subscribe and hit like. Your support keeps the freshest Philadelphia Eagles updates flying in. Drop your take in the comments and let's talk birds. A soft hum of speculation has swept through league circles after a curious message from Eagles general manager Howie Roseman began circulating behind closed doors. No one is willing to go on record yet, but multiple team insiders claim Roseman delivered what some are calling a pointed shot in the direction of the Cowboys, one that has left both front offices buzzing. According to people familiar with the situation, Roseman's comment wasn't made on a public podium, but rather during an internal conversation that somehow found its way into the wider NFL echo chamber. The wording remains disputed, but the intent, sources insist, was unmistakable, a firm, almost defiant reminder that the Eagles are far from intimidated by their longtime rivals. Some describe it as competitive fire, others as a subtle taunt, and a few as a calculated psychological jab crafted to ripple across the division. What sparked the remark remains unclear. Some speculate it stemmed from recent whispers coming out of Dallas about roster flexibility and confidence in off-season moves. Others believe Roseman simply felt the need to reassert Philadelphia's stance in the never-ending chess match between the two franchises. Whatever the motivation, the message carried enough weight to ignite a small storm of conversation among executives, analysts, and players who heard about it second or third hand. In Philadelphia, the reaction has been mixed amusement and admiration. Many believe Roseman thrives on these competitive undercurrents, using them to fuel the organization's edge. In Dallas, the vibe is reportedly more curious than rattled. Team personnel are said to be dissecting the rumored remark, wondering whether it hints at a strategic shift, a roster surprise, or simply Roseman's flair for asserting dominance in subtle but unmistakable ways. For now, nothing is official, Nothing is confirmed, and no one is fully comfortable attaching their name to the story, but the buzz continues to grow, weaving its way through locker rooms, meeting rooms, and late-night calls across the league. One thing is certain, whatever Howie Roseman said, it hit its intended target and the Cowboys are listening. That's a wrap from FlyEaglesFly News. If you want the fastest Eagles updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Sound off in the comments. Let's talk birds.